Yes, Namsa here at Ngozi Talk Shows, Find Your Own Voice, Led from Within. With me today, I have Dr. Biget and Amanda Murray, Nick Motichka, and Grant Morel. How are you guys?
Good.
Thank you.
Awesome. So our topic today is closing yourself off emotionally. And we intend to, when we go through struggles in life, we intend to actually create this wall and build a wall on ourselves and close emotionally and try to protect ourselves. So we don't want people to hate us. We don't want to enter relationships. We don't want to do other things because we are protecting ourselves emotionally. We don't want people to know what is going on in our lives because we believe that everyone is out there to get us. So today, what do you think about the topic, Nick? I'm asking you because you just gave me your something and I read is just there, exactly the topic.
Yeah, so have been historically kind of an expert at closing myself off emotionally. So that's, I think, something for me that I grew up with. And so anytime anything got, a little heated, or if someone was upset, I would just like almost push away from that person and separate. And so that's definitely a pattern in my past that I'm still working on, because those patterns definitely run deep, and that programming runs deep for me. And so it's definitely, I don't have that mastered at all. So I'm very interested to hear some strategies for dealing with that today from our expert panel here. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Amanda?
Well, I think there's so many ways that we can close ourselves off and kind of like have time to hibernate. And sometimes I think that's a little bit important. But it also, if it's a pattern that's arising and that you've noticed that, then that's something completely different. And so I really think that we need to talk about the difference between like a boundary and closing yourself off emotionally, because I think those are two different things. What do you think, Grant?
Thanks, Amanda. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was smiling when Nobso introduced the concept, because I was thinking, you can look at that two ways. The title can be, about closing yourself off as a good thing, as a bad thing. Now, I know where you're going with it, generally as a bad thing, but not always. Because about half an hour ago, I was speaking to somebody who represents a group of traders, online traders. And of course, a lot of traders go wrong, for example, is where they don't close themselves off emotionally, and where they do get involved with greed and fear. That's a killer for a trader, right? You've got to be emotionless while you're trading. Nothing to do with the rest of your life. But this is my point. You need to operate throughout the range. There is a time when it's very good to close yourself off emotionally, and you have to think with your left brain logically, and it's very, very good to do that. But of course, you need to restore that chi, restore that balance, and use your right brain and think emotionally. And I gather, this is obviously where we're going with the show today, onto that aspect of it. But there is a time to do both. And I think, like in most things in life, it is about creating that right balance and knowing when to tap into one side and when to tap into the other. Because if you're fully emotionless, it can cause problems, it can close you off, it can cause illness, all of these kind of things. If you're completely open and fluid to everything, then you're like a ship at the ocean without a rudder. So, it is about creating the two. And that's, I'm sure, is what we're going to explore and unwrap as we go through the show. So that's how I wanted to set the context off from the beginning. And how about you, Dr. Bridget?
I love how you and Amanda says, there is a balance that I prefer calling it harmony, because it's To me, balance is like teeter-tottering, but sometimes it's harmony where you move from one state to each other. I mean, closing off is actually a human survival mechanism. It's not the bad thing. And at the same time, as everything else is in life, when you have a little too much or a little too little of something, then if you go to one extreme or the other, then it can be challenging. And I hear you, Nick, how you were really great in closing up. I used to be so good with that back in the day of the day, decades ago, that my former husband and some other people called me the ice queen. And probably not the label that anybody want to carry, being the ice queen or something like that. And thankfully, I have at some point I realized that it's a defense mechanism. So we has been hurt many times. Being a grief specialist and having had more educations about it in the last 2 decades in using my evidence-based system, we know that grief and incompletely resolved grief can cause people, in general, all grief cause people to be fearful, suspicious, and defensive. Naturally, if you are hurt, if you have a partner who, or you witness somebody, grief doesn't always have to happen to you personally, but you, let's say in your work, you see somebody being cheated by, talking about business, somebody being cheated by their partner, and then go down the tube and become homeless. Or in your personal life, you notice a friend or somebody who matters to you, at least the fan being authentic and then shut down by other people, that can cause trauma. And naturally, who wants to be traumatized? Who wants to be homeless or something, right? And if we don't know how to navigate through and complete that conflict inside, which is really what grief is, a conflict when something happened in you, and then become fearful, then we'll close off emotionally. So it's one of those things that I think it's a necessary thing, but we want to be able to dance like with everything else in life in a graceful manner. I see you nodding, Humsa. What's your thought about it?
It's nodding because I'm agreeing with you, Dr. Bigot, that we need to dance with whatever is going on in our lives. And also I agree with Nick that he says it was very, very easy for him to actually close down emotionally, and I think we all have done it. Sometimes it's like if you're around people that are not like positive, you end up closing down your emotion because you don't want to express how you're feeling, don't want to be judged. And that can affect your confidence, that can affect your self-awareness as a human being. It can affect your communication skills as well. And I've noticed it as well myself. It's like the church that I go to, I had a chat with my pastor, and when we were chatting, I realized that sometimes people don't have time to get to know you. They judge you based on what they see. It's like myself, when I meet people, I intend to actually, I don't close off, but I don't like to talk about me. I don't like to talk about the things that I can do. I let somebody take the lead unless they actually ask me if I want to get involved. And also I make them know that I'm available to get involved. And I realize that sometimes the people shut down because emotionally, because of their surrounding, and you end up not expressing your feelings. Even it happens in relationship. If you date somebody that is actually negative, you go to this defense mechanism, like what Dr. Bickett was saying, and end up not expressing what you are actually feeling. So actually, it's very, very important to have freedom in your life, to be with people that allow you to express yourself. And it is important that to actually understand that we are all different and we are all human, and our point of view of life is actually it might be different, but it doesn't mean that we are right, the other person is wrong. As long as we agree that we understand each other, that's how I see it. It's like, I'm a Christian. Sometimes when I meet people who are not religion, I'm happy to listen to them about why they are not religious. But when I start talking about God, I always get in trouble. So honestly, but I came to a point now that I just have to pick it. I just have to remove myself, because I believe that you don't have to have the same beliefs in order to be friends with someone. Or like here at Ngozi Talk Shows, I don't know if anyone agrees with me. We are like maybe 12 coaches. We all have different beliefs, but it's okay. We can listen to each other. We don't have to shut when somebody like Grant likes to hypnotize people. What do you call it? I call it mind control.
No, 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 no. Hang on, stop you right there. No, I don't like to hypnotize people. I do it if they require me to do it, and if I feel it's the appropriate fit for them. I have a very, very strict context of who I do accept as a client. And I actually turn quite a few people away, and I tell them I don't feel it's appropriate for you.
Yeah.
But it's not mind control. I don't want to control.
That's how I call it, because it makes me laugh that hypnotherapist. But I can't make you guys wrong, because it's what you do. I just have to ask you questions instead of shutting you down and say this is this and this is that.
And on that point, so I'll jump
Yeah.
in there if I may. So that's a great point in case.
Yeah.
So with that, for example, when people ask about if some people are fearful,
Yeah.
it can be bad hypnotists. There's good, there's bad accountants, there's bad hypnotists, there's bad builders. But and if you do, and I ask, I say, well, you know, one, you've got to feel really comfortable with the. And I said this to someone this week, literally, find a hypnotherapist that you're comfortable with, that you resonate with. That's very important, very important. Because what you've got to find is that a good hypnotist, and I always say, not interested in controlling other people. God alone, I have enough trouble controlling myself. I certainly don't want the job of controlling other people, but I give them the ability to control themselves. That's what's important. That's what's important. But and you're absolutely right, Nomsa, because you know when people say to me, "How's the way to do it?" and I'll say, "I'll give you a suggested way to do it," but there's many ways to achieve it. This is when it comes into human behavior profiling, which I offer, because the way I would help one client would be different to the way I'd help another, because we receive information differently. So when I'm working with a group, this comes into marketing so that you get a group of people with a similar set of problems so that you can give a kind of a one size fits all for that group. When it's an individual, it can be a lot more bespoke, and think someone may need a little bit of EMDR, they may need some hypnotherapy, they may need some processing or some Socratic coaching. So I can make a combination of what they need, if that makes sense. And there is not one way to do it. That's why I kind of mix and match with an individual to get the right side. Because medicine, we don't all accept the same kind of medicine, do we? And it's the same, I think, with coaching or therapies. And there is lots of different ways. So there's always suggested theories. You get 3 IT consultants together and they'll always have a different way of fixing the computer. Okay, but it achieves the end result. And I think that's really important, that everybody has a different way of helping people. And that's good because it gives clients choice. And I think you formed that question up nicely there, Nomsa. And that's the way that I would approach that.
Grant, I'll just say from my own experience, so just for some background, so I was in law enforcement for my entire adult life, so over 20 years, and as part of that, you deal with a lot of trauma, and I ended up with PTSD and tried all sorts of different counseling, traditional kind of talk therapies, EMDR, exposure therapies, and for me, actually, none of that really worked. I got a little bit of separation from my traumas, but it wasn't getting me back to myself. And so, and again, I'll just kind of give a little bit more context. So I guess as part of my job, dealing with trauma and that on a regular basis, one of my coping mechanisms to get through that was to close off emotionally and to, in a sense, almost dehumanize the person or the situation that I was dealing with. And that was just, again, simply to get through the day to day, right? When you're dealing with just horrendous things, whether it's a car crash to whatever, it was just a lot easier for me to kind of compartmentalize that and not really feel that the human side of it. And so that it definitely was a way for me to get through that day to day, but that wasn't sustainable in the long term. And it worked for me for 15 plus years. And then finally, one day in the middle of 2020, that coping mechanism just failed for me. It just wasn't cutting it anymore. And all of that suppressed emotions and trauma and memories just came boiling up to the surface. And it was a good thing for me. I needed that. I needed it to come and be right in my face in order for me to take the hint to finally actually process those traumas, because what I was doing was I was actually giving them power over me by pushing them down every time they come up. So I'd be reminded by a location or a smell or whatever it was, and I would just be like, nope, not today, not thinking about that one, and just push it down. And in so doing, I was giving it power over me. And it ended up affecting me in all areas of my life. I just wasn't the person that I know I can be. And so the best thing that ever happened to me was I call it a breakthrough, because it 100% was a breakthrough. In that moment when they all came crashing in on me, it certainly didn't feel like a breakthrough. It felt quite negative. But with the benefit of hindsight, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, and it forced me to finally effectively deal with them. And then to fast forward, so like I mentioned, those traditional therapies just weren't for me, or I don't know if it was the wrong psychologists or the wrong situation, I'm not sure. But for me, what I needed was psychedelic assisted therapy. And that was my breakthrough. I was able to, in an afternoon, process decades of trauma effectively and move them through my body. And they remain, of course, as memories, but they don't hold any emotional charge over me anymore. And it has really liberated me and in my life and given me back basically myself, where I'm not affected in my day-to-day life by these traumas that I had been giving power to. So I guess closing myself off emotionally with that context makes a little more sense. So now I'm in a place where I've moved past that, and I'm not in that world, in that line of work anymore. And so now I'm trying to find that balance of healthy expressing and not closing myself off emotionally. I guess still with that background though, where I know that still helped me in a sense. So that's where I'm coming from. Amanda?
I love how you tell how your story helped you release those emotions that you were closing yourself off from, and how you found a tool that actually worked for you. And I think there's so many people out there that are struggling with that same thing and need a tool that's going to help them, or multiple tools that are going to help them learn how to release those emotions that are keep being stuck inside their body and holding them back. Because we do that. We tend to like push them down. Don't bring this up. Don't let, and then it just all comes out and in different ways. And it could be like a disease, it could be getting sick, it could be all of these things that come up. And Louise Hay talks about disease as like things that you're struggling with in your body. And if you learn how to reset your mindset, that you actually can heal yourself. And I think so often we feel when we're emotionally closed off, we don't feel like we have tools or strategies to deal with them. That's why we just push them down. And so that's why I talk too about the difference between a boundary and closing off, because a boundary is conscious and like a healing way to deal with certain things, whereas emotionally closed off, in my mind anyways, is like a coping mechanism that you're just like this pattern that you do to try to like survive rather than thrive. And setting a clear, healthy boundary would be choosing a way that's going to help you thrive consciously, whereas closing yourself off emotionally is this like pattern that you use just to like survive. I don't know what you guys think about that. That's what like goes on in my head when I think about the two. Grant?
I think you both made really great points. I love it. Starting off, I love what Nick said there about, those other therapies didn't work for Nick. And that's exactly my point. It's what I call designer medicine. It doesn't always work for some. EMDR, for example, you said didn't work for you, and I completely get that. I've used that on someone who, now I know someone's been doing EMDR for months, which confuses me, because when I did it with someone, I do it with people a lot, and they can't guarantee this every time, but someone who had a problem for 19 years and using the SAT scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the strongest, it was a level 9, and had it for 19 years. 4 minutes, I got rid of it, gone. With EMDR. Yeah, done. Simple. Didn't need it, checked in later, gone. His response was, where have you put it? And I said, bring it back. And I tried to bring it back. Come on, bring it back. I don't believe it's gone. And I was saying, come on, bring it back, bring it back. I didn't want any residue left. It was gone. But didn't work with Nick. And I completely get that. This is why I say you have to embrace other modalities. You have to look at it. People may say to me, what's best, hypnosis or Reiki? And I said, what do you think's best? They say Reiki. I said, go get Reiki. You can't get precious about this stuff. It's about, if you really care about that person, you want them to get the fix. I've got a friend and wants hypnotherapy, and I said, go where you want, you can come to me. I said, but I would not be offended if you go to someone else. I want you to be well. That's my goal. Whether that means for me, somebody else, I really don't mind. That's not what it's about. It's not about ego. It's about helping that person. And you said, like Nick, intervention of psychedelics help. There's an awful lot of evidence for microdosing. I don't think that would be for me, but it doesn't mean to say it for someone else. A lot of people get tons of results from that. And it is about finding what's working, because what happens, a lot of PTSD starts like this. It isn't where people think it's one incident. It's the pressure cooker thing building up. So where you're closing it off, your amygdala goes into fight, flight, freeze many times a second. It's always doing that. And when it closes up, it's a question of diminishing returns. So it opens up and expands and contracts. But when an incident happens, be it that car crash, be it that violent altercation that you witnessed, be it something, be it a trauma in your life, your career, anything, it goes back, but doesn't go back quite to where it was. So it kind of goes like that. And another incident happens and doesn't go quite like that. And then eventually it gets stuck, and that's when you go pop. And people think, oh, it was that incident that happened yesterday. The straw that broke the camel's back is probably the best way to refer it. It is an accumulative effect, or a cocktail, as I call it. There's a cocktail of incidents that come, and eventually it pops. And there's different ways of releasing that pressure. I have methods to do it for people, which may or may not work. It has a very high success rate. But point in case, you see, Nick tried something, or he tried those kind of things that didn't work. Having said that, Nick made another point. Was it that individual therapist? Quite often the case. Take hypnotherapy, for example. I will get people come to me. I'm mainly a coach. I'm a business coach, but I use hypnotherapy where required, with their permission, where required, and when I think it's appropriate. But for example, say people say, I had hypnosis before, and I don't think it really works. They did this and I did that, and I'm thinking I wouldn't have done it that way. And I said, let me know if you're open to it. And I asked the normal questions I do to see if it's appropriate for them. And if it is, I do it. And quite often they get a completely different result with me. So it can be the hypnotherapist. As I said, you've got to resonate with that hypnotherapist. You've got to understand they know what they're doing. They have the best intentions, which they always should anyway, of course. And that's that. So it is sometimes a skill. A lot of hypnotherapists don't do themselves justice, to be fair, because they don't frame it correctly in the beginning. And I will always say that most hypnotherapy is done before the official session starts. And a lot of people miss that. So there's a lot of pre-framing that goes into hypnotherapy. And where people don't do that and don't open up the expectations of what hypnosis is and what it isn't, that's where a lot of hypnotherapists do themselves a disservice, in my opinion. They do themselves a disservice and the client, because they don't necessarily get out of it because they don't know what to be expecting from it. If you ask a hypnotherapist, the most boring thing about hypnotherapy is it doesn't take you to different planets to do that, because we're like, hey, sign me up for that. We'd love it. So I always say the easiest people to hypnotize are hypnotherapists, because we're so open to it. You know, we love it. And again, if someone wants to resist hypnotherapy, I think you've got no business doing it on them if they don't want it. For example, one of my friends would love it and is scared. And I've sat down and spoken down. I said, well, you know, what are you scared of? What do you think can happen? Da, 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 da. And my advice would be to, I mean, they would trust me. And I said, yeah, I'd do it for you. But if you need to go somewhere else, that's fine. But should try to eliminate the fears. And I think a good job of a hypnotherapist, if someone was willing to do it but had fear, you should explain that to them, explain the process. I always say hypnotherapy, no medication, no nasty pills rattling around your body, which of course sometimes there's a need for those, but not unless you really need to have them. No pills, no scars, no hospital. You come in the morning, you go back to work in the afternoon. Voila, I think it's wonderful. Is it the solution to everything? No. Is it the solution to a lot of things? Yeah. Which comes on to where Amanda mentioned, yeah, you can heal yourself. Certain teachers, Donna Eden, for example, is a great healing teacher. And teaches people to heal. And, you know, again, you've got to be careful of the legalities of the wording you use with that. Are a lot of people living at dis-ease of life, which cause this bodily disease? Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of things that are brought around psychosomatically. Is everything brought around psychosomatically? Some people will say yes, some people will say categorically no. My opinion, for what it's worth, is in some cases, yes, not in all cases. Is there a need for conventional medicine? Is there a need for holistic medicine? I think there's a need for both. I think they should work together. You know, again, taking back to Nobs's great point, you know, should you listen to other people's modalities? 100%, 100%. If you really care about just getting well, take a look at all options. You know, life's about choice. Take a look at all options and see what's right for you. And that's just what I want to pick up on, the two great points that made by Nick and Amanda. And Dr. Bridget, I'm sure you've got some great stuff to add to that, and I'd love to hear your opinions on them.
Well, I would say it's a great point, and basically, you know, there are two. The way I see it, it's two things. I mean, first, yes, I agree with you all, where it's everybody is unique. I mean, I usually let people say, use the analogy of your fingerprints. We know that everyone are meant to have different fingerprints combination. So everyone's unique. Your might, well, it's kind of like wearing gloves. You might fit with this one and it's not that one. And then if you really look, I say this to my grief clients, because sometimes we change moment to moment. And that moment to moment literally could be when you are in the midst of grieving. It's between this minutes and the next, or this hour and the next, but also it could be this year and next year. We continually change. If you look at your fingerprints, each finger has a slightly different prints. So we're meant to be unique and pairings all the time. And so, and that means what works with you might not work with somebody else. What works with one person might not the other. Now, being a grief specialist, I've heard many times where actually all my suicide watch clients are on counseling and typical and classical therapy. It doesn't work because the therapy, the EMDR and so forth, get to the level of the mind or the brain, and grief and traumas goes into your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And to open the heart, you can do it multiple ways though. I mean, it's not always grief coaching. Like even with me, I have a grief coaching in a classical term, or it's group or individual, but I use this, for instance, dance away sadness, to touch the part of grief that words cannot touch. And Unique use psychedelic therapy. And that's a different way. Grief, we know, I believe that Joe Dispenza is the one say this, or make it popular, where grief get into your body, into your cellular, molecular system. And so something to take it out, whether it's dancing, whether it's music, whether it's arts, whether it's psychedelic things, whether it's something else, right? To get it out of the cells, to get it out of the heart, in addition of the mind. But also sometimes it's also with us, it's with everyone, it could also be, so it's the individual, it's the system, it might be the person, but sometimes it's just the preparation. So in other words, like with clients who come to me, 90% of my clients, 100% of the suicide watch, but 90% of the clients who has been through counseling, has been through therapy, has had EMDR, hypnotherapists, you name it out there, the one that mostly address the mind. But then to me, that's make my life easier because their mind's already been addressed. Now I just need to help them go back in, what like I typically say, use the word go into the journey, into the heart. The one who never has anything, and they kind of like, boom, boom, boom. Let's find the grief therapist right away, the grief specialist right away. That's actually, then it's a double job for me. Thankfully, I'm equipped for that because I'm also a doctor, a certified life coach, and all these other things. But also, then I'm like, okay, yes, you need your heart to recover your broken heart, but also you still need your processing part, the mind part need to still be work on. And so what I'm saying is everybody has different journey. And with you, the therapy, the EMDR, all these things might have brought you to a place where you are ready. And the next step, back to what Grant said, the camel that break the straw that break the camel back, and the it's like it's all been processed here. It's all been prepared. It's like if you're baking a cake, all these other modalities is like the components of the cake's been finally put together, and then the psychedelic is the baking process that is finally allow these cakes to become a beautiful new cake of you, so to say, that allow you to go from breakdown to breakthrough, right? And so that is it's a different. It just, everybody is so unique, and the same thing when you back to the original topic, that the topic of this being not being closed down and so forth. It comes a lot of times in a different level. And like you said, now you're trying to find a balance, or I use it to find a harmony where you are open. And many times it's normal and it's human to say that you go this way and then you go to the opposite, and then you're like, okay, now I've life is a practice. As I usually say, life is a practice, life is a dance. And so how are you going to dance your life? And in a way, yes, you can dance dance away sadness, for instance. There's no right or wrong way, it's a freestyle dancing. But even if you dance, say, tango, yes, there is a certain way to dance tango, but everybody throw their own flair. And so what fits for somebody might not be for you, which is back really what Nicosa Talk Show is all about, isn't it, Numsa?
Away with the problems, you have to learn to dance away with your problems. That's 100% true. And also, like Nikki was saying that he went for therapy and it didn't agree with him. We have to actually, it's very, very important, like for our audience who are watching, that if you go to a therapist, and if that therapist, if you don't connect with that therapist, it's not that everyone is going to be the same. Just keep trying. Like Nick, he found his own system, he created his own system, he didn't give up, created his own system to get to where he needed to be, because he was able to actually recognize that there was a problem and he needed to actually fix that problem. And he didn't want to stay in the victim mode. He just wanted to get rid of the pain, and he did, but his own way. So it's very, very important, mostly for men. Men like to think that they don't have to go and speak to a therapist because it shows weakness. But that is not true, because we're all human beings and we are all created. Our feelings are the same. No one says a man has to be stronger than a woman. We are all, we all feel the pain. So that means when if you feel that something is not right, go get help. And that will avoid sickness, it will avoid loss of disease, and it will avoid so many things, because so many diseases are caused by pain. So if anyone is watching, don't shut down and let your emotions become a trauma to your life, and dance away with problems, like Dr. Bickett is saying, and seek help. And I went to 4 psychologists or 5, I can't remember. But in the end, it's not that they were all no good. They were all good. But in my head, I hadn't made up my mind that I needed actually to break away from that pain. But when I left the last one, it was like when I realized actually I need to let it go. And I realized that this woman, she's been trying to actually help me to let go of that pain instead of shutting down and not talking about problems. And now I do talk. Whenever I have a problem, I do talk about my problems, but you have to talk about them to the right people. Don't just let everyone know about problems, because that's when people can actually start judging your life. We live in a very, very judgmental world where people don't have time to get to know you. And it's very, very important to just find somebody that you know that they're going to help you when you speak to them. They're going to listen without giving you advice. Sometimes when people talk, it's not that they need advice. They just want that person to listen and just be there for them. And it does help, and there are consequences. So what are the consequences, Grant? We've not spoken about the consequences of shutting down your emotions.
Well, thanks, Nomsa. And great points made by Dr. Burgett and yourself there. Well, of course, as you say, when people talk about it, some people, that's their coping mechanism. That's that pressure boiler. When we're talking about a pressure cooker, and that's their way of just going and letting it off by talking. Some people vocalize it, but if you don't, of course, these emotions build up. They build up, and they are going to come out at some point. Now, that doesn't mean to say, I mean, there's so many therapies, isn't there? There's therapies and courses where you sit there and you punch pillows. Okay. Okay. If it works for you. You've got to try it. And it's just the same as business. It's just the same as marketing. What do you do with marketing? You test and you measure. What do you do with these therapies? You test and you measure. You try the one that you feel works for you, and you try it. And if it doesn't work, you try a different one. It is about knowing yourself. You know, I've got to give you a different example right here. Earlier, I was talking to someone who is in the entertainment industry this morning, and they was asking me about, how was your Christmas? And I said, not that I had any trauma, but I said, it was great. You know what? I switched off completely. And I said, I've recharged my batteries. I've got clarity. I've got creativity. How did you do that? What did you use? Did you use this? Did you use the EMDR? Did you use heart mass? I said, none of it. I watched television. I watched retro TV, which I think regressed me. So if it regresses you to childhood, when we was in childhood, we were much more open, much more creative, more free. It helped me get back in touch with who I am. Now, I'm pretty much in touch with who I am. It's, I do this stuff every day, so I'm pretty much topped up. But I want to take it deeper. And I did that. I stayed away from webinars, shows, trainings, teachings, workshops, the stuff that I'm doing throughout the year. Loads of people ask, Grant, do you want to hop onto this one? Do you want to do a podcast? Like, no, thank you. No, not at all. Got those boundaries? Not at all. I am completely on a break until the 3rd of Jan. And I stuck to that. And I didn't try consciously to do anything. But by just watching TV, retro TV, not doing anything, just letting it all flow out, suddenly ideas started popping out my head. Do this, big picture, do that. The plan for next year will be this. So when it came to me actually writing my goals for the year, the answers were already there. So I would love to tell you from some great therapy or one great technique that I've got. No, it wasn't. But that is about knowing how to operate yourself. And one of my key points is that all our lives, we're trying to learn how to operate new software, learn new technology, and I get loads of therapists. I want to learn this new technique. And I look at what they have and I say, you've got more than enough tools to help a lot of people. You don't need that. What you need is you need to learn how to operate your own software. That's what you need. It's not more modalities, more training, more this, more that. Even in business, I mean, there we go. There's an idea. There's a lot of deep sales calls which I'm on to go onto with a collective group. And one of my coaches who coached me in a certain area was also talking about sales, not his given area. And he gave some advice on sales. Here's the truth of it. It is not the most advanced sales technique at all. Not at all. And it is related to therapy. It is not the most advanced at all. Far, far from it. Quite pedestrian. But he does it well. And it works well for him. Okay. And I was thinking, this is interesting. It's not the best advice. I can give way better advice than that and probably would sell more. But it's very simple. It works very easy. He's very comfortable with it. He can do it stress-free, and it produces probably 85% of the result of a different modality. But he does it effortlessly. So there's the value of effortlessly against pure output. It's a sliding scale. This is not black or white. This is shades of grey, this thing. And that maps over completely to holistic therapy, because there we are. Dr. Burgess said earlier that EMDR just works with the brain, not with the gut. I think he'd say not with her. Great point. Yet sometimes I've done it very simply, 4 minutes, and cured the person. And that's not to say you're wrong. Far from it. I'm sure you're absolutely right. But sometimes an easier, and I can do that so easily, so quickly, so effortlessly. And there's other processes I use which will take 2 hours. Depends what they need. And it also brings up the point about heart and brain. Do we have one or do we have 3? It could be head brain, heart brain, gut brain. There's certain theories on that too. right? Which goes to show, as you said, and I love your idea. I always talk about DNA. I don't understand why people have tattoos to be individual. We have a thing called DNA that makes us relatively individual, as far as I'm aware. And it's you look at, you have a problem. Is it here? Is it there? It moves all around. I spoke to a colleague earlier who said that he remembered having pain in his back when we was abroad teaching the government, doing some coaching for the government, and he had a pain. Turns out he had a kidney infection and it's moved around, and the doctor said, well, these things move around. It's gone there, now it's gone there. Absolutely. Problems move around. They don't always stay still. You rattle them around. So I think the modality you use depends on exactly what you're saying. Where is it? And this is something which we'll often say in coaching, or what's stopping you? Where's the problem? You're looking for the challenge. In hypnosis, you say, where is that feeling? Oh, it's here, or it's all down my arm, or it's kind of like that. Okay, I get it. So I think I know what I'll do for that. It's about understanding, and I find it's quite often not going in for a set formula. This is why, for example, in hypnotherapy, when people have scripts, I don't understand that. How can you go in for a script? They don't even know what they're going to come out with. I have no idea what they're going to come out with in a session. Whether it's going to be, oh, I hate my boss, or it was that kid who kicked me off my bicycle when I was 3 years old. I have no idea what's going to come out of them. Or maybe it would just be, or I don't know. So you can't go in with a script, because I certainly don't know what they're going to come out with, and they have no idea either. Trust me, they have no idea. What happens, happens. So you've got to be fluid, you've got to be present, you've got to be open to using different skills for different people, I think. But to answer the question up front there, Nomsa, the dangers of not doing it is very simple. It builds up. Now, look, every time you have a bad day at work, does that mean you need therapy? No, of course not. That's just living. That's just life. You get a flat tire, a kid will scream in the classroom, Amanda, etc. This is just life. It's normal. But if it builds up and it becomes a regular thing, you know what? Why not? You take your car to the garage, you give it a tune, which means it burns less fuel and gets there faster and more efficiently, and unless there's less wear and tear on the car. You do that with your car on a regular basis. Why would we not do it to ourselves? Treat yourselves, be good, which I think is a great thing. If you reframe it in your mind that you're treating yourself, i.e. people would go and pay a lot of money to go to a health farm and say, I'm treating myself. Yes, you are. What about treating your mind, treating your gut, treating your body when you treat your soul? Because at the end of the day, everything else you do in your life all comes down to one thing. And this is our mind, body, and soul. We are the operators of it. So as I said, learn to operate yourself, look after yourself, and the rest of the life becomes a joy. Who wants to jump in?
Yeah, Fang is saying on Facebook, or preparing it is the key. I just wanted to pass the message. Go on, whoever was talking, please.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I like how Grant talked about how he just took a break and that break allowed like creativity to flow. And that's one thing that I talk about. It's not really talking about the like closing yourself off emotionally, but sometimes when we're like trying to fix something and trying to fix something and trying to fix something, nothing's working. And if you just take a step away and do something else and leave it be and just trust in the flow of life, then whatever it is that you're struggling with will eventually work itself out. Not pushing it down, but just setting it to the side, I think sometimes is something that's really, really important, because I always tell people too, like it's good to let your kids be bored, because that's when they're the most creative. If they're overscheduled and over like have something to do every single hour of the day, you never give them time to actually just be creative and be with themselves. And when you do that, you never know what they're going to come up with. And even for myself too, like I'm much more creative when I'm not forced into something. And I think creativity and different things, like we were asked to do this big project at the school, and the prince, like I've done a bunch of big school-wide art projects, and they were like, okay, we're having this meeting at this time to brainstorm. And I said, I'm not coming. I said, I hate meetings, and sitting in a meeting brainstorming is going to get me nowhere. I said, I'll come up with something and I'll tell you what it is in the hallway in passing or whatever, but I'm not coming to your meeting because I will have zero creative ideas there. I'll just be annoyed. And of course, just like I always do, I'm like in the shower and like, oh, we should do this. And then of course we do this beautiful, like giant puzzle piece artwork with every kid got a tiny puzzle piece, and I made it into this beautiful tree. But if you had made me sit in a meeting and said, we need to come up with an idea by this time and da, 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 I would have been like, I got nothing.
I love that.
But to the fact that I knew my boundary and was like, I'm not coming to your meeting, but I will come up with something for you. Trust me. And I did. And that's just the way that I work. But I was like, I set my boundary very clear that I'm not coming to your stupid meeting because it will get me nowhere.
I'm sorry, Amanda, I love that so much. See, that's a great example of knowing how to operate yourself. You know, I mean, I do mastermind meetings, they work for me, but I know what you mean. You'll go to a meeting and people say, let's, in the next 10 minutes, map out 10 goals for the business in the next year. I'm like, that sounds like a really bad idea, because they're pressured to sit there and they'll come up with something. And then that's what they're dedicated to have to do for the next year. It's like, do you really feel that? Or you're just saying, oh, come on, lunch in 10 minutes, I'm hungry. Let's just knock anything out, because that sounds like a really bad idea. And I love what you said about you walked along the corridor and an idea will come. I'm not a songwriter. I used to be a musician years ago, but the other day I was cooking lunch. And I was cooking lunch, and as I walked between the sink and the cooker, I just thought of a different way to actually create lyrics and a different way to form lyrics in a song. I wasn't even trying to think of that. And I thought, I've never thought of that before. Oh, okay. And that was it. It was just them. It's just when you're relaxed stuff, it's about flow, it's about chi, it's about energy, it's about, and you know that sitting there doing stupid meetings, as you see them, doesn't work for you. And I think if you was a great boss, you'd do it. Yeah, I used to years ago used to manage a lot of blue chip companies, and they varied from financial houses to marketing suites and you know, creative. And there was one, I don't want to mention the name of the brand, but a very big company, and it was a phone company, actually, very big phone and marketing company. And they had like their switching center where, you know, all the satellites from around the world came in, etc. And then the other one, which was the business center. Then you got onto the creative design office, really interesting. And you went in there and there was offices like with massage tables, huge fish tanks, hi-fi, you know, music systems. And that's where they said the executives would sit there and walk around barefooted, just sitting there listening to music and stuff. And one of the buildings that we looked after was a big corporate bank. And yeah, there was all the, you know, there was the trading floors and this, that, and some floors had no computers, just phones. They did deals, they did relationships. They built massive international deals. They just had telephone with an unlimited budget. Right, and they had conference calls. All right, they had that long before we had, you know, Zoom and stuff like this, right? And that's what they had. Now another one had one little room, and it was called Quiet Room. And I spoke to one of the heads of the bank. They said that's the most damn important room in here. Our top executives go in there. They said and they can do anything they want. Some of them just go to sleep. They just go and sleep for 5 hours. And they're on a real big paycheck, a massive paycheck. They just sleep for hours. Some sit there and listen to heavy rock. Some listen to classical. Some smoke. In those days when you could smoke in offices, they smoke. Some sit there and just, you know, sit there and dance. There you go, dance therapy. That there was blinds on the window. No one can. They do whatever they want. He said, that room makes us a fortune. No boundaries, no rules, no, we're going to do it like this. It's, you're great. You're great at doing what you do. Just go away and do it any way you can. Marketing, British Airways years ago, we used to have a slogan. Wait, British Airways, and it was Britain's best airline, I believe. They wanted to rebrand to be more inclusive, etc., etc. They changed the logo, and they got a marketing consultant, and I think they paid him about $1 million. This is going back a long time, and he went away. And after a couple of months, I said, how are you getting on with that? He said, yeah, I'm working on it. And a couple more months, I said, oh, why? We paid you a lot of money. You've got some like rough drafts. He said, I'm working on it. So, and after 6 months, he said, yeah, I'm nearly there. And then he said, got it. This is going to be brilliant. So it was Britain's best airline, I recall. And he came back and said, got it. This is going to be great. Okay, what is it? He said, it was Britain's best airline. Yes. Now it's Britain's favourite airline. We paid you $1 million for one word. He said, oh, yeah. But that one word is going to make a hell of a difference. Britain's best airline is arrogant. That's you saying we're the best. That's arrogant as hell. And that was the problem. I think it was the world's not good. The world's favourite airline is inclusive. We've listened to you. This is what you said. That, it makes a world of difference. And sales went through the roof. So what was it? He just said, pay me the money, leave me alone, you'll get the result. And I think that's a great way of mixing business in with holistic, because everything's related. So I often look at analogies from here, there, and map them over. And I just wanted to share that and let that percolate through people's system, and hopefully you'll get the analogy and see where that goes. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I love what you were saying about that, just stepping away, because like I said, for me, if there's a like specific thing that you want me to do, I'm never going to do it in that hour meeting ever. ever. That's a waste of time for me, because I need that room to just like sit with it, leave me with the idea. It'll take me, like, tell me and just let me walk away with it, and then I can figure it out. But I can't work on a timeline like that. And I love how that airline was just like, this is the perfect thing too, because but I think that's like that ability to set a boundary versus like emotionally close yourself off too, right? Is that this is the way I work best. So I'm going to give myself the space for that. And I think that's something that we always need to be conscious of. But I think we're getting close to time. What do you think, Nomza?
I think I love how you say that, Amanda, because it's one of those things that, back to the boundary and or the closing off and the example, sometimes you do want to, and particularly with your life experience and even the best work and things, sometimes we, being human, we sometimes still have even things like triggered, and you know, anybody who's been through all sort of work, even having worked with me, even myself, and any of the grief specialists, we are still human. And so sometimes there are times, like in this example, if you notice, well, certain things going to close me off, like being feeling like I'm being targeted, so to say, in a meeting or something like that, then I'm going to close off. Well, sometimes, or if you are in a situations where you can, my significant others know this, there are certain times, he's a very successful businessman, but he knows that if he's in certain discussion, he might actually launches at people. And not a good idea, particularly when you're talking about in the $100 million of project. He's like, okay, there's certain time he's like, oh, I'm gonna just close down before I kill somebody. Not literally, but it's like, shut down and then step back and then come back to that. So there are time and place for everything. Not all the time he closed down, but there are time and place for everything. Is really, I think, is the bottom of that. And then you just learn to navigate. 20 years ago, he didn't know how to do that. Now he does. He's in his 50s, and as we learn, it's I think what I want to say for our audience as a final message in this discussion is, yes, you don't want to be closed down. And at the same time, if you are in your journey of being more open, perhaps you notice this, Nick. I noticed this when I recovered. I'm acquainted with grief since 5, and when I first came back to the word, so to say, it's a dance. It's one step. So you step here. Sometimes you step on somebody else's toes, and sometimes you notice you got step again, and it's a continual dance. And don't get discouraged. Continue on, because you'll, like all dancing, you'll become a pro in it very soon too.
Any comment and words of encouragement sometime, and also tell the audience who you are, so we can leave on time, please. Amanda, I think she needs to go.
Oh, I can go. My name is Amanda Cottrell. I am a teacher and an author, and I help people find their unique creative capacities within themselves. And my best advice to you, if you feel like you're closing yourself off emotionally, is to get really present with that and just sit with it and find out what is it that's causing you to close yourself off. And then what tools do you have in your tool belt that you can possibly use to release that? So just let it flow through you so that you can get on and flow with life. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I love what you guys have been talking about, and or finding that what works for you individually. And I think that's so key, is that, yeah, it's so different for each of us. And so finding those strategies, mechanisms that work for us individually, and then use them, and use your intuition and your own internal guidance and trust it to tell you what you need, whether it's to spend Christmas watching retro TV, or for me to seek out a psychedelic healer, just to trust that and just let life flow. Because when you hold on too tight and try and control the outcomes, it very, very rarely works out, I think, in your favor. And just one more point is, Dr. Burgett was talking about the mind versus the heart, and how for me it was the traditional therapies were just targeting the head side, and for me I was looking for something a lot deeper, and my traumas were definitely held within my body. And once I found that and was able to get to those places, that's when they finally released and processed. And so you can, my website is on the screen here. I went from policing to the fashion industry, and I am just looking to spread the word of basically my story, and in the hopes that it can inspire people to see that there's alternative options for people. If those traditional things aren't working for you, there's other modalities out there. So thank you.
Nick, Dr. Bickett?
Yeah, I would say I'm in terms of what I do, I am a grief specialist. I help you recover from your heartbreak, whether it is something that occurred a day ago, or it is something that occurred 4 decades ago. If it is interfering your life, if you've been whether it's something that happened interfering your life because of an experience, whether it's a loss of a loved one or something else, a trauma happened a day ago, or it is something that you've tried everything in life, and as Nick says, and it seems like you're stuck, then perhaps we want to discover what is hidden in the heart. And that's where I help you. And I am actually, you can see my screens, you can connect with me easily, dr10forgrief@gmail.com or joyfulrichesbeyondgrief.com. And what about you, Grant?
Thank you, Dr. Rojek. Yeah, my name is Grant Morrell. I'm an international speaker, coach, trainer, and an international best-selling author. And over the past 20 years, myself and an international team have helped thousands of individuals, entrepreneurs, businesses, and organizations across 15 countries. We've helped them to increase their profits by up to 200% in just a few short months by working with their team. And everybody does have a team, their systems, their mindset, and their strategy, so that they can live a life of passion, purpose, and freedom, and develop a business and a lifestyle that can become a legacy for generations to come. So here's the point. Everybody's forcing stuff in, but it's time to let stuff come out. So as always, my prescription will be, look at your diary. Don't tell me you don't have time, because everybody has the same time, 168 hours in a week, non-negotiable. It's what we choose, there's the word, what we choose to do with that time. In that time, I would highly recommend you schedule a little bit of time for yourself to use that quiet room that I spoke about. Maybe your quiet room isn't so quiet. Maybe you love to listen to loud music. I had a cousin who used to listen to loud music so that he excelled and did his PhD. Worked for him, wouldn't work for me. So what is that quiet room, that special room for you? You take that little bit of time out for yourself rather than stuffing stuff in to let stuff come out. Because when you do, quite often the purpose leads to you. And if you need more advice on how to find that, you can look me up, Grant Morrell. I'm on social media. You'll find me. Take care. And now back over to you, Nomsa.
If anyone wants to follow any of our coaches, please go to if you want to get in touch with our coaches, go to my website or go to Ngozi Talk Show's page, and please get in touch with our coaches, whatever the problem you might have. If you are watching this video, watching other videos we've made in the past, whoever the coach that you feel connected to, get in touch and let me know. I'll connect you with one of the coaches that you select, and or you can go to my website as well and just give me a call or send me an email. Either way, whatever works for you. And live with grace, everyone, and God bless.